I remember the night like it was yesterday. The neon lights of the Valley View Casino reflected off the rain-soaked asphalt like a cheap mirage, beckoning in the lost souls of the city. My boots crunched on the gravel as I stepped out of my cruiser, the sound echoing through the deserted parking lot. I'd been patrolling this stretch of Route 15 for years, and something about this night felt off. The air was heavy with the smell of cigarette smoke and desperation. As I approached the casino, I noticed a group of suspicious characters lingering near the entrance. They were the type who didn't belong. Too polished, too clean-cut for this part of town. My gut told me they were trouble, but my training kicked in, and I pushed the thought aside. I'd seen my fair share of wannabe gangsters and wannabe gamblers. What was the worst that could happen? My radio crackled, and Dispatch's smooth voice cut through the static. "Deputy, we've got a possible 211 in progress at the Valley View Casino. Report of multiple suspects, possible hostages." My heart sank, and my mind went into overdrive. A 211, an armed robbery, was the last thing I needed on my plate. But I knew I had to act fast. I flashed my lights, and my car screeched to a halt near the entrance. The neon lights seemed to flicker in sync with my racing thoughts. I grabbed my phone and dialed in the call, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Dispatch, this is Deputy 14-4. I've got a possible 211 at the Valley View Casino. Requesting backup, ASAP." As I waited for reinforcements, my eyes locked onto the group of suspects. They seemed to sense my gaze, and for a split second, our eyes met. It was a fleeting moment, but I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body. I knew in that instant, this was about to be one long, long night. My heart's racing like a jackrabbit's as I recall that fateful evening. The sun's descent below the horizon had painted the desert a warm orange, but that peaceful ambience was shattered in an instant. The casino erupted into chaos as three men in black tactical gear burst through the doors, guns blazing. The sound of gunfire echoed through the air, making my gut twist with a mix of fear and adrenaline. My eyes locked onto the scene, my training kicking in as I instinctively assessed the situation. The men were moving swiftly, their black gear blending into the shadows as they fired shots into the ceiling, sending panicked screams and shattering glass everywhere. The patrons were scrambling for cover, some diving under tables, while others were desperately trying to flee. My mind flashed to the security guards, frozen in place, their eyes wide with terror as the men demanded cash. I could hear their voices, shrill and panicked, as they complied with the robbers' demands. My gut told me to act, to move, but my brain was racing with questions. How many were there? Where were the other deputies? Were they all accounted for? I felt a cold sweat break out on my brow as I took in the scene. My hand instinctively went to my own sidearm, my fingers wrapping around the familiar grip. I was trained for this, but nothing can truly prepare you for the raw chaos of a real-life hostage situation. My thoughts were a jumbled mess. What was the play? How to contain the situation? How to keep everyone safe? The only thing I knew for certain was that I had to act, and I had to act now. The clock was ticking, and every second counted. My heart's racing, sweat dripping down my face like it's a summer day in July. I'm stuck outside, waiting for the signal to move in. My eyes are locked on the casino entrance, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I've been in this game long enough to know that something's off. The robbers, they seem too calm, too calculated. My partner, Jenkins, gives me a nod. It's time to move. We're in plain clothes, trying to blend in with the crowd, but I can feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins like liquid fire. We push through the doors, our eyes scanning the room for any sign of the robbers. They're moving fast, but we're right behind them. I see the flash of a gun, the sound of shattering glass. My training kicks in, and I'm moving instinctively, my hand instinctively reaching for my own gun. My mind screaming at me to stay calm, to wait for the signal to engage. But I know what's at stake. Lives, innocent lives. The room erupts into chaos. People are screaming, running for cover. The robbers are returning fire, and I see one of them take a bullet to the shoulder. My gut twists with a mix of emotions, fear, anger, and a dash of relief that we're finally in the fight. That's when I see them, our plainclothes deputies, already inside, moving swiftly and silently. They're launching a desperate bid to take down the robbers, and I know we're in this for the long haul. I take a deep breath, steady my aim, and prepare to join the fray. This is it. This is the moment we've been training for. My heart is still racing, reliving that chaos. I remember the sound of shattering glass, the crunch of gravel beneath our boots as we burst into the bank. The robbers, their faces twisted in a mix of fear and desperation, were caught off guard. My partner, Jenkins, yells down, "Get down," but it's too late. One of them opens fire, a loud crack echoing off the walls. I feel a jolt, my instincts screaming, "Take cover," as I hit the ground. A patron screams, another takes cover, and I see the chaos unfold in slow motion. Bullets whizzing, patrons running for their lives. I glance at Jenkins, our eyes lock, and we're both thinking the same thing. We need to take these guys down. I remember the sound of Jenkins' voice, calm and steady. "I've got the one on the left." My focus narrows to the one on the right, my finger tightening on my Glock. I take a deep breath, visualizing the shot, the trajectory of the bullet. My training kicks in, my body reacting on autopilot. I squeeze the trigger, and time seems to freeze. The sound of the gunshot still echoes in my mind, loud, sharp, and final. The robber falls to the ground, motionless. My heart is pounding in my chest, sweat dripping down my face. The other two are still on their feet, injured but still armed. I see the fear in their eyes, the desperation. Jenkins and I exchange a knowing glance, and we both move in, our guns trained on the remaining robbers. We're a well-oiled machine, working in tandem. I see the moment when they finally realize they're outnumbered, outgunned. It's then that they drop their guns, and we move in to subdue them. The scene is one of utter chaos, but in that moment, I'm in complete control. The dust still hung heavy in the air, a fine powder that coated everything like a dirty shroud. I squinted through the grit, scanning the casino floor for any signs of movement. The SWAT teams fanned out, their black tactical gear blending into the shadows as they moved to secure each table, each slot machine. The sound of their boots on the polished floor was like a drumbeat, steady and relentless. My eyes locked onto the sheriff, his face etched with a mix of relief and exhaustion. He nodded at me, his eyes flashing with a silent message, "Good job, deputy." I felt a surge of pride, mixed with a healthy dose of fear. We'd dodged a bullet, but I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. The patrons, shaken and confused, began to file out through the back exits, their faces pale and drawn. I watched as they stumbled into the bright sunlight, blinking away the darkness of the casino. Some of them looked like they'd seen a ghost, others just looked lost. My mind was racing with the what-ifs. What if we'd been a minute slower? What if the perp had gotten out of the casino? I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. We still had work to do, still had to process the scene and gather evidence. The sheriff stepped forward, his voice booming across the gaming floor. "Good job, team," he said, his voice sincere. This could have ended a lot worse. I felt a sense of pride swell up inside me, mixed with a healthy dose of relief. We'd done it. We'd prevented a mass casualty event. But as I looked around at the devastation, the shattered glass and the broken dreams, I knew this was far from over. I stood in the sweltering desert sun, sweat dripping down my face as I surveyed the chaos around me. Our unit had just wrapped up a long, grueling standoff, taking down two heavily armed suspects who terrorized a small bank in the middle of Main Street. Our team had moved swift and precise, taking down the robbers without a single shot fired. But as we tended to our wounded and hauled the suspects away, my gut began to twist with a creeping sense of unease. It started with the gear. High-tech stuff. The kind of equipment you'd expect to see in a special ops unit, not a couple of small-town bank robbers. And then there were the training, the precision, the coordination. These guys didn't seem like your run-of-the-mill thieves. They were pros. As I watched our suspects being led away in handcuffs, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just scratched the surface of something much, much bigger. What were these guys after? Was it just a score, or was there a larger game at play? The more I thought about it, the more my mind started racing with worst-case scenarios. Were they working for a bigger organization? A terrorist cell? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced over at my partner, Jenkins, who was scribbling notes on his pad. He looked up and caught my eye, and I could see the same unease reflected back at me. We exchanged a silent understanding. We'd just scratched the surface of something much, much bigger, and we were about to dig deeper.